p.m., March 19th, 2024. This is a meeting of the Bolton Advisory Committee. We have on our side, Bob Guerrero, Don Cole, Bill Nichols, and Omid Garoni. And Bob, I'll turn it over to you for a second.
All right. Thank you, Bob. I'd just like to call the posted meeting of the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board for tonight's meeting, Advisory Committee meeting, in case there is a vote. Brian Boyle has other commitments and was not able to attend, but I'm here with Stan Wysocki.
Okay. Our first agenda item is the vote on the Neshoba Regional School District assessment. So I will share the budget. Okay, so the assessment numbers were finalized, and so these are the final numbers. The operating expenses are a little over 18 million. The total assessment, including the debt for the new high school, comes in at 18,857,473. I'll note that we did ask the school district to try to get down to 4% or less. They came very close, 4.16%. So I think we'd like to see that go down in the future, but I know they worked hard to get it down to this point. Anybody have questions on the school district assessment?
Yeah, I got a couple. As I understand it, that number didn't change, that Kirk wasn't able to get it down any further from our last meeting with him. Is that correct?
No, actually, I think it did go down.
Oh, because I thought I saw that exact number previously.
Don, wasn't it at like 4.5%, and they got it down to 4.16 or something like that?
It was at 4.77%, and then it went down to 4.22 and landed at 4.16.
Okay. Now, the impact of this, as I recall from some high-level numbers that Bob, I think you had started to discuss a while back in the budget summary, they kind of show we had roughly, using very round numbers, we had roughly 800,000 could be the maximum increase that we could do. And the town has requested the increases. Well, I can't see it on this page, but the increases was something in the order of 400,000 or 500,000, and now we've got 700,000. So the budget as it is right now is in excess of the increase that we have on the taxes, et cetera. So we'd be in a Prop 2 override situation. Is that correct?
No,
as stated right here.
No. So
Okay.
Let me explain the numbers we had looked at probably a month ago, that the additional Prop 2.5 revenue that the town could generate plus new growth was estimated to be roughly 800,000.
Yep.
So ideally, we asked the school district to get to no more than 60% of that 800,000. Now that,
Yep,
we really didn't expect that they would ever get close to that. So they came in at 721,000. This is their increase in their operating expenses.
okay.
Which, represents much more of the new revenue than we would like to see. But we'll go through the total budget numbers in a minute. But we're not looking at an override situation here.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the Neshoba Regional School District budget assessment?
I'll put a motion to approve the Bolton assessment of 18,056,206.
I second that.
Okay, wait, let me just, let's step back for a second. So the total amount we need to approve is actually this whole amount, 18,857,473.
Ah, my mistake.
Sorry.
Amend that to a motion to approve the 18,557,857,473.
I second that.
Okay, roll call, Don,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll move into our review of the entire budget. And we wanted to take this opportunity to step back and look at the budget comprehensively, all of our revenue, all of our expenditures, and do what we need to do to get the budget to balance. So Don Lowe and the rest of the town finance team has made a number of suggestions, and I'd like to walk through the budget and those suggestions, and then we can discuss if we want to modify anything or whatever. So we're looking at the main budget summary tab in the budget, and I'm looking at this column, which is the advisory approved column, which has some of these all these recommended changes. So the levy limit for FY25 is going to be 27,600,000 plus change. There is a $175,000 allowance for any abatements and exemptions. State revenue anticipated at 311,277. Local receipts is 2.3 million or so. Other available funds, and so this is 295,000, and I'll show you where this comes from. These other available funds include 100,000 for the overlay reserve, 100,000 in ARPA funds that the select board approved last week to be used for the FY25 operating expenses, and 95,000 for the Parks and Rec and ALS revolving funds. So that's where this 295 comes from. This 79,000, these are articles that were approved in previous town meetings that we're still spending. The 905,000, that's the recommendation to take from free cash to cover operating expenses. And then we have about 314,000 coming from proposed articles for this annual town meeting. And I'll show you what those are. So those articles, there's about 50,000 for the Forbush Mill Bridge project. There's about 11,000 in unpaid bills from prior fiscal years. There's a proposal to move 138,000 into the advisory reserve fund this year. Now that actually doesn't affect the FY25 budget, but we need to account for it here because it is going to have an impact on our free cash. And then there's an article to move 115,000 to replenish the stabilization fund that we withdrew from last year. So all of that adds up to a total expected revenue of about 31.6 million. So then we come down to our expenditures. This expenditure line, 31,100,000 and some thousand, is what we've been reviewing and discussing and approving over the last 3 months or so, with 2 exceptions. One exception is moving $20,000 from the snow and ice fund that we had originally plussed up the snow and ice fund, taking that back. The other potential change is putting only $75,000 towards the OPEB funds, which is about 25% of what the full funding would be. And then There are other expenditures. These are state and county expenditures, and then the same warrant articles that were discussed above. They come into revenue, but then they have to go out here on expenditures. So add all of that up and we get down to zero down here, which is great. We're balanced. And the caveats are that, again, OPEB is funded. So we're down here looking at the levers we can make adjustments with. OPEB funded at 75,000, reducing snow and ice by 20,000, taking about 905,000 from free cash, and the approval to use 100,000 in ARPA funds. So that's how we get to zero.
OPEB are we hitting? The town or the school?
This is the town. So let me, before we get into adjusting any of these levers, there's a couple of adjustments on the revenue side that I think we'd like to make. So the local receipts for 2.266 million. If we go into revenue and look at the estimated local receipts, one of the items that factors in here are excise tax on cannabis sales. And my understanding, and Don, correct me if I've got this wrong, but my understanding is 300,000 is probably a good number in terms of what we might see in a year, but we're only going to see 3 quarters, 3 calendar quarters worth of taxes in FY25.
That's correct, and that will only be for the first fiscal year. The problem being, and Ninotchka and I learned this late in the game, all the sales tax is paid directly to DOR by the business, and then DOR redirects our 3% to us. We probably will not realize the Q4 revenue in time to book it for FY25. Then obviously going into FY26, we'll be seeing Q4, Q1, Q2, Q3, so we'll have a full fiscal year's revenue after that.
Right.
So again, to be conservative, we felt that 225 is a better number than 300 because it's 75% of 300,000.
Okay, so I'm going to adjust this to 225, and I'll highlight this, and Don, I'll send the spreadsheet back to you after the meeting. So I'll highlight that as a change.
Please put it up on the website.
Oh, the spreadsheet? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one change. There's the second change. If we go into where this the levy limit for taxes comes in, part of what goes into that levy limit is all of the debt that can be excluded. And these are all of those the debt articles. When Ninotchka first put the spreadsheet together, she was being very conservative. The exclusion for the fire trucks in 21 and 23, these two cells, so it's 114,000 for the first fire truck, 135,000 for the second. I'm going to jump to the debt tab here. Those cells only include the principal. So you can see that here and here, where in actuality, we can take advantage of the principal and interest. So that's another like 92,000 that we can add to the revenue column. So I'm going to adjust those cells as well. And again, they're highlighted so that, Don, when you see this, you and Ninotchka will know what we did here. But this is okay. So that changes the revenue side a little bit and leaves us with, a whopping excess of 16,000. Okay, Bob Zikansky.
Yeah, going back to the cannabis, that $300,000 that was originally there, we get 3% of sales, so that's worth $10 million in sales. And I know that's what they're expecting to do the first year. But it seems to me that that would be the number that would be optimistic and that they're making public. And I'm questioning whether or not we should take that with a grain of salt and maybe look at a smaller number, because there's no consequences to them as far as the town goes if they don't meet that number. But if we have a revenue shortfall that's substantial because they run into problems, we don't have a lot of levers to pull. So I'm asking how people feel about going and revising that number down a bit.
Does anyone have any experience or know of anything in other towns and how quickly these places like get up and running and what their sales volume is? I have no sense.
Bob, my experience is all anecdotal. So let me just say that right up front. And I am not a customer. This is all observation. But unlike other businesses, I would have much more firsthand knowledge if it was a package store, but it's not. So unlike other businesses, this type of business seems to ramp up in new locations very quickly. Because it is a product that's in demand, and when a location opens that's, you know, more convenient for people than things were before, they tend to get hit fairly quickly. You know, on day one they're not going to be as busy as they are on day 10 necessarily, but these are the numbers that we have from the owner of the company. What we have has come directly from the owner of the company. So I could not intelligently suggest a different number because, you know, I'm just working with the number that we have, and we have not. Some colleagues of mine and I have not observed, you know, long wrap ups for this type of business.
Don Cole?
If you could explain some recent court rulings for me, I'd appreciate it. Is anecdotally, I thought that the Supreme Judicial Court did something said you can't take anything unless you can show you spent more money for it or something. You can't just say, you know, you have to show you have expenses. Is that accurate or no?
You're conflating that with what would be called a community impact fee.
Okay.
When you by statute, any town where a dispensary resides, that town is eligible for 3% sales tax on gross sales.
Okay.
Separate from that, when this was originally agreed to, and the state pulled a bait and switch on towns, there's no question about it. There was also supposed to be up to 3% of gross sales that could be charged as a community impact fee, which, you know, when we first started working with these businesses, we had anticipated we would see. The big thing that hit the news was the town of Uxbridge, who I believe had been in business with this one dispensary for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. They'd had a host community agreement in place. The dispensary sued to recover all of the or a portion of their community impact fees that they had already paid the town, and it went to court. It was never adjudicated. It was settled outside of court, but the settlement resulted in Uxbridge having to repay about 80% of everything they ever collected, which was in excess of $1.1 million. So, which, you know, a very unfortunate circumstance, obviously, but that would have, that ruling, or that precedent is not a ruling. That precedent will have no impact on our sales tax revenue.
Okay.
Other thoughts on what we might want to do with these taxes?
Is this a experienced management group? Or are they operating other dispensaries in other towns?
This is actually their third business, and you're only allowed 3 licenses in the state. They have a large, I guess I'd call it grow facility in Ashland, and they have a dispensary in Groton. That's up and running. So yes, they are quite experienced.
Okay.
And Don, do we have a sense of when they're gonna start, when they're gonna open?
By July, by July, if not before, they're working hard to get the place up and running now.
They look fairly well along at the Country Cupboard if you drive by and take a look inside. But if we reduce this, then we have to find someplace else to take the money from.
Right. Okay, so let me see, I'm back to, so here we are, this is 225. Could leave it and hope the company is accurate, that they have enough experience, they know what they're talking about. Or we could be conservative and cut it back by 10%, 20%.
Before we do that, there was a couple of things on the expenditures that may impact this. Could we just take a quick peek at those that I had on the expenditures tab,
Okay,
if you don't mind?
yep, which ones?
The tab, the expenditures. Can't you see where I'm pointing on my monitor? So first off, I just wanted, if you could scroll down to the bottom, please. Okay, all right. I just wanted to be sure. Oh, all right. All right. Last I saw, there wasn't anything in for police and fire accidents. So that's all set. On the salaries and wages line 660, that formula includes, I don't know, 30 or about 150,000 of things that aren't salary. It refers to things up in the inspectors line, with 100,000 for the 580 Main Street, plus the wages for the various inspectors, that plumbing and wiring and stuff. So that may reduce the Medicare a little bit. Anyways, a couple of grand. I can show you if you'd like fairly quickly.
And that Medicare tax you're saying is based on that?
Yep. So that Medicare, that tax formula goes to this line 660. If you click anywhere in that formula and then scroll up. Oh, nope, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. Scroll up to departments like 241, etc. All right, so scroll up a little more, please. All right, so row number 311 is included in there. I don't know if we want the row 310, the 580 Main Street inspections, but I would assume that we do not want included in that row 322, which is a purchase of services. I assume they're outside consultants, and the same with row 327. We have both of those in there, and I don't think we necessarily want those. I'm not sure about the 580 Main Street inspections line to include that to calculate the Medicare taxes.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Nanachka's not here to.
Yeah, what you're saying certainly sounds reasonable.
Okay,
I'm reluctant to change anything without Ninotchka.
I hear you. I
yeah.
hear you.
But we can certainly, we can point that out to her, and
We're talking 140 at 1%. What's that, like $1,400 or something? 140K.
Yeah.
So it's not really material.
Yeah. Okay, no, but it's a good catch if that. Okay, so back over to revenues and cannabis taxes. That were 200,000. Is that conservative enough or not quite? I have no sense of this stuff either. Or did we just leave it? Okay, let's leave it for now. And let's talk a little bit about some of these, some of the other levers here. So the articles that are going in front of town meeting this year. So one of them is 138,000 for the reserve fund. There's a pending transfer request tonight. After assuming we approve that, we'll have about 16,000 remaining this year in the reserve fund. So the additional funds that we get here are really to get us, well, they're for May and June, plus anything that happens in April that we may have to defer until May. So I thought 138,000 felt a little high. But Don, you, I think, know of some looming bills that we should probably.
Well, I'll be happy to walk you through how we got to that. We know that, and if you feel like I've double counted anything here, Bob, please just point it out. I'm trying to capture everything. We know that DPW has already sought $25,000 for the buildings account. I think you've already approved that, but I wasn't sure. DPW, for your next meeting, will be submitting a $38,000 transfer request for the transfer station. We got about 6 weeks of funds left to keep the transfer station going. The main impact there right now appears to be a 25% increase in solid waste disposal fees. Usage seems to be up too, but we're still working on that. We just got a $22,400 and something bill from Miracle O'Connell for legal fees for February, which we're pretty much already out of money, obviously, which is why we need the 22,000. So I asked Anachka to do to look at the run rate last year from March through June for FY23. That figure was $59,000. So when you added it all, when you add it all up, it seemed like a good figure for us was $138,000, but I did count the 22,000 that we're looking for tonight, because I just wanted to make sure that you are comfortable with what you got left, because I thought, you had under $40,000 left, and we may well need it. So I was looking at your reserve fund as it stood right now as pristine, and this is what we're going to need over and above.
Right. So we can cover tonight's transfer request with the current reserve fund, plus there's still a little remaining.
Yes.
So if we assume 60,000 for legal fees, like you're suggesting, plus say 40,000 for DPW, that's 100,000. If this were 120,000, think that would be sufficient?
Well, let me ask you this. Have you already approved the $25,000 transfer request from DPW previously for the buildings?
No, we didn't.
Okay. So then, yes, I would say you could you may be able to drop it down to say 120, as you just said. I would be leery about doing much more than that. Obviously, in this particular case, it's better to have a little too much. If it doesn't get spent, it's gonna go back to free cash anyway for next year.
Right.
If Don and the finance team have suggested 138, I think we should just keep it that way. To Don's point, if we have a little bit left over, it goes into free cash. If we don't have enough, we're in trouble. And we are cutting it kind of close.
I think we're going to be short. No, I guess we're not short. We have a little excess. So if we leave that as is, and if we leave the cannabis tax as is, we're ahead of the game. Yeah, we're ahead of the game by 16,000.
What is the OPEB funding level?
So right now it's set at 75,000, which is about 25% of fully funded.
So we'll have to play catch up on that at some point.
Yeah, that concerns me. I know, Stan, you and I just had many meetings regarding the school catching up, and now looks like we're heading in the opposite direction with the town. That 75,000 is going to turn into 100, 200,000 by the time we spend it. I just don't know.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, I would love to fund it 100%, but we don't have the money.
That's what
Yeah, we just don't have it. And so far tonight, I mean, we've got 16,226 we can play with. So, I mean, we're far from that, but I think certainly it's important to do something with OPEB. Set the example. But I mean, our discussions with the district, I mean, they only started in 2019 and they've only done like 50 grand a year.
right.
I mean, we're far better.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when all this is over, I'll make a comment, but not now about the school budget. But if you can find some place to do it, but I don't see where there is anything. We're only funding a third of the stabilization fund that we took last year for the roof. So I mean, it would be nice to put all that back this year too. And
I would submit, touching on Stan's point, when we took from the stabilization fund last year for the roof, the stated plan was to try to do a third repayment over 3 years, and advisory is honoring that with this budget tonight. I think the makeup for the OPEB, I think the commitment needs to be to fully fund OPEB next year and also do a third catch up for the balance that isn't being covered tonight to play catch up. If we've got that documented strategy, if we did need to go out to borrow for something, and Standard & Poor's took a look at where we are, they would see the commitment. And this won't become anything to be reviewed by Standard & Poor's until we are in a position where we have to go out and borrow again. And if we've got the get well plan from a 1-year deviation, I don't think it would impact our bond rating. But Don's point is well taken. There needs to be a commitment to play catch up.
yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We can certainly put that plan in place. Whether we're going to have the funds next year to execute it, I guess, is another question. So if there's an extra 16,000 here, we'll try not to spend it all in one place, but we could potentially reduce that cannabis tax by, say, 15,000. If that makes folks more comfortable that it's more reasonable.
You know, if you did that and the estimate is correct, then that money will just go back into free cash.
Right.
So cutting it by another $15,000 is a low risk strategy. It's not like you're giving up on the money or reducing the free cash that you're likely to have.
Right. Okay.
Hey, with 1,226, we can have a nice little party.
There you go.
Don, I had a question about why the free cash numbers end up, why you selected the free cash numbers you did to end up with the free cash balance, like at such an odd, not an integer number, 349, 729, 35 cents.
Well, we pretty much backed into it, we knew where we were, obviously, and assuming a free cash target of 350, we just kind of fell backwards into it. I mean, wherever the budget was, we knew what the deficit was, we knew what the levers were, we knew that we didn't want to go beyond or below $350,000, so that's, we backed into it.
Hey, Bob, those numbers should have changed when you were making the other changes.
The numbers up above here change. These numbers will only change if I change.
I thought they were tied to the
Well,
upper numbers.
They are, but I don't think we've changed anything that affects any of these.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That should be hardwired, I think.
So we could adjust the free cash we're allocating to operating expenses by a little bit to get this number actually above 350K if that's important.
But it's got to reflect what's in your revenue on the top half.
Right. That's right. So if I change this number here, it will change down below.
And all the changes we've made so far don't affect that number?
No, we changed the taxes coming in when we took advantage of excluding the principal and interest, and we changed the local receipts coming in.
All right. Well, I guess that's that's your free cash result. I mean, it's so close to 350.
Yeah,
It's not worth making it perfect.
All right.
I mean, you can apply $1,226 to free cash to
right.
get
To
that
put it-
line, zero that out, and then you're slightly over 350K.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. 350 is the price point, so to speak. That would do it.
What do we think? Is that worth doing?
Well-
You're not going to remember it next year. It's not going to matter.
No, I would say just move it so that 1226 is zero, and you know exactly what we got this odd number for free cash. Let's just make it the real free cash, because that's where that money's going to go anyway.
So that puts us at 906,283 here.
No, it goes the other way.
Other way.
Yeah,
Oh, right. Yes, we can use less.
Less is more.
yeah.
903,831. Okay, that is zero.
There you go. That's
Now that leaves us $138,31. Okay.
There you go.
That's where we are. Any other comments, adjustments, suggestions? I actually think it's quite an accomplishment that we're in this position, and it could be worse.
Well, I think we should all stop talking and vote.
All right. Let's see, what are we voting on? Is there a motion from the advisory committee to approve the budget as adjusted tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget as adjusted to balance out to zero.
I second that.
Roll call, Don,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Omid,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay,
Stan, if it's all right with you, I would prefer to have Brian be part of the vote on this.
That's fine. Yeah, we can do it at our next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, because we've got to actually get it in the warrant article to vote on it, so,
Yep, that's fine.
and
okay.
actually, I think we'll end up voting on this again as well next week as part of the warrant. That's fine. Stan, did you want to make a comment?
Just a couple things. One, it's been my opinion for quite some time that I think we need to be looking at, although obviously we couldn't do it this year, that we should be trying to increase that free cash resulting number each year. It's become very clear that the whole paradigm has shifted. It shifted a number of years ago, where we cannot continue in this vein. I mean, Don and I were talking, there are at least 5 towns that we know of, including Harvard, that need to do overrides this year. And probably that list is probably a lot larger. So we're using over $900,000 to balance the budget. And I think, any way that we can build ourselves a little cushion year over year for some of these unexpected things, which we're finding all the time. I mean, it's not through lack of effort, but I think we need to be increasing that. The second thing is, I think next year, what seems to be happening is that we're handed a final number by the district and of what our assessment is and what the increase is, and we have to live with that. And we're doing all these dances to try to figure out how we can cover what we need to cover. And it's a lot like the tail wagging the dog. I think we need to start to change that, where we need to tell the district what we can live with, and that they need to come up somehow with the number that we need to live with. And let them do a little bit of the deciding where to put what. Because I mean, there's 65% of the budget. Once the new high school comes in, it's going to be close to 70% of every tax dollar that our residents are paying are going to the schools. So I think we need to get some meeting of the mind that it's got to work both ways. And I think, we asked them for 4%. Yeah, they came in close, but they didn't come in close enough. I mean, they started with over 10%, almost 11%, which was absolutely ridiculous. So I think we have to have some really serious discussions, and we need to tell them what it is we can live with, and figure out some better meeting of the minds for next year and moving forward.
And the process you described is the process that the town has to live with, right? We have our levy limit. We know in advance what that's going to be, and we have to live within that. We have no choice.
Right.
Right. And the last thing that we want to do is do an override, because an override is forever.
Yep.
And we're getting dangerously close to having to do that. I think we dodged the bullet this year, but I can't, with revenue not coming in the way we expected, vacancies the way they are, we need to do something a bit different.
Yep.
Just on that, is that a possibility we can create a committee, a think tank committee, under you guys to go through options of what we can do to work on this, to bring our free cash, what other avenues we can go and utilize, like make this an actual project, because like past three advisory committee I've been sitting in, every year we're gonna build this cash thing. We're gonna, it's been a concern at every single one. I feel like we need to make an actionable plan. And I feel like trying to build a portion of advisory committee working under select, trying to come up with an actual avenues that we can adjust those throughout the year would be preferable, because now we're waiting for something to present instead of just talking about it in all these meetings.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Omid's thoughts. I mean, certainly when you strip away the structure differences, this budget is a huge amount of salaries and stuff. And I think ignoring, that we could probably put together a pretty good forecast with the various step increases, et cetera. If we could have all the information and get a good sense of what's coming up. I don't know if the school would go along with that, but.
Well, let me offer my opinion that the school works with the town, Bolton, but the school really pays a lot more attention to the population in general, because most of the population has kids in the school. And that unless the school district or the school administration thinks they are going to lose the support of the parents, you're not going to see any changes. And there's a lot of parents out there. I mean, I've been doing this since, I don't know, 2007, 2008. I've as frustrated as anybody tonight, but what I've learned is the school district and the school committee pay attention not to the administrators in the towns, but to the voters in the towns. And unless this group of people, the advisory committee and the select board, can get a majority of the voters to share their views, the school district isn't going to care what goal we ask them to meet.
Generally, I agree with you, Bob. I would, just for clarity, I would say they're not interested specifically in the general population, but the parents.
Yeah. That's their core constituency.
Exactly.
John, go ahead.
Bob, I just wanted to check in to see if you'd need me for anything else before I step off.
No, we're good. Thank you for joining. Thanks a lot.
Well, my pleasure. There's a heck of a way to go out on my last budget, but I'm
Hey,
glad
Don?
Yes.
Don, if we hear any change jingling in your pockets as you go out the door, we're gonna pick you up by the ankles and get it out.
If it's only change, you're way ahead of the game. You won't hear the dollars rustling in there. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Yep.
Good night, Don.
Go ahead, Don.
All right. So thanks for all the comments. There's definitely a lot of food for thought there. I think it's worth thinking about certainly some strategies going forward. All right, for the purposes of the rest of this meeting, Bob, do you want to adjourn the select board, or do you want to just keep your meeting going? We have a couple more advisory items to get through.
I was gonna sit in on them anyway, so I'll adjourn when you adjourn, unless Stan wants to leave early.
No, I'll hang in there.
Okay.
Okay, all right, let's go. Okay, so we have I'm going to share the net. We have a transfer request to approve. If I can find it. All right. This is the transfer request that Don was referring to. This is another one for legal expenses that were incurred in February. And the total amount here is $22,408.60. Is there a motion to approve this transfer request?
I'll put a motion to approve this transfer request of 22,408.60.
I second that.
Roll call, Don,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay. The last item is I wanted to do a very brief walkthrough of a couple of items in the financial policies document that we have been revising. I don't want to vote on this tonight. I just wanted to discuss a couple of sections where there were some content changes, and then I wanted to turn this over to the town finance team to get some of their feedback. Once we've incorporated that, then we'll consider voting on this. Okay, so I think we've got a good revision of the document. We're at the point now where all the minor changes have been made. Selectmen to select board. There were a few minor typos. All the hyperlinks have been fixed and corrected. There's only 3 areas that have some content changes that I wanted to talk through. So the first is in the capital planning policy. And this policy throughout referred to the capital planning committee. We used to have a capital planning committee, and a few years ago that was disbanded. It was a deliberate move to do that. And the functions in the capital planning committee were moved to the town administrator and the advisory committee and the select board. So throughout this policy, I've just removed references to the capital planning committee. Any comments there anyone wants to make?
Looks
Okay.
good.
Pretty simple. All right, there is another content change on page 11, and I'm just looking for a sanity check here because I think it's a typo. And I just would like some other eyes on this to make sure I was correct. So the original, I'm down in this paragraph. The original wording said, department heads shall carefully manage their appropriations to produce excess income and budget turnbacks. I think that's supposed to be reduce excess income and budget turnbacks.
Oh, I have a gut reaction. I never want to reduce income. But, I mean.
No, what that means is in years past, like 20 plus years past,
Yep.
there was more money that was being returned by department heads and their budgets back to free cash, which meant that there was a lot of money that they actually didn't need. And over the years, we have reduced that cycle. So one of the benefits is that we've tightened the budget up to the point where what the budget is what they actually need, and there's not a lot of excess. the downside is that, when in the fall or whenever it is that they, certify our free cash number, it's not necessarily as high as we would like it because the departments aren't returning more cash. So there's less slop in the budget.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I think if we just get rid of the words, then excess income and, so it reduces budget turnbacks. How's that sound?
well, what you're telling them to do is spend it. So, given the intention of the whole sentence,
Good point.
produce is the correct word. You might want to just take out the whole sentence and change it to something like department head shall only request appropriations to minimize excess income and budget turnbacks.
Why
Actually,
don't you just take out income and budget and just reflect on accurate budget?
Yeah, and that's essentially, that's sort of the root.
I mean, that's what you're going for.
And
okay, what, Bill, can you say that again?
Just take out just do away with the excess income.
yeah, or put a period after appropriations.
Yes,
Shall carefully manage their appropriations and eliminate the rest of the sentence?
yes.
Yes. I mean, you could add more verbiage there, but I think that's fine
Yeah.
after appropriations.
It sounds good.
Mark Twain that thing.
Carefully manage. All right, great. Easy enough. Okay, and then the last section with some content changes. So Greg actually proposed these changes, and he's not here tonight, but we can talk through them. He suggested eliminating this last sentence. I'm not sure why this comes, it's not verbatim, but it's very close to the Mass Department of Local Services best practices documents. So I'm not sure why he wanted to eliminate that.
Well, going back to Ahmed and Don's suggestion of looking at future expenses, that's forecasting.
Right.
So I think you got to make a decision if you want to do forecasting or not tonight. It's not been done. I just haven't, it's a good idea. I just have never seen anybody really pursue it and do that. We've got the contracts, personnel and union. We know what the steps are, and it is mostly salaries. So we should be able to do that. Now, I think we're going to have to do that in isolation from the school district, but I still think it's a good exercise to do. For example, when we're discussing union contracts, we want to know what are the budget ramifications for the full term of the contract before we agree with it. We're just not looking at the first year stuff.
Right.
And that's got to be taken into account when you're doing the free cash forecasting and stuff like that too.
Yep.
Of course, you could take that out and still do forecasting, but it's up to you how you want to
Yeah, I
ask
just,
yourselves.
right. I'm not sure why this particular line would be considered one that we should eliminate. It seems consistent with the rest of this policy.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty benign. So there was also a suggestion to reprioritize these bullets. So these bullets refer to if the town gets one-time large revenues, say the town sold some land or something like that and got an infusion of cash, this policy prioritizes how we should use the cash. And previously, the priority or currently in our policy document, it's cash capital budget, which I think is just capital expenses, OPEB trust fund and stabilization fund. And the suggestion was to reprioritize that and put the stabilization fund first, then capital purchases and OPEB. Thoughts on that?
What are the stabilization goals? Are those written down someplace?
Yeah, I don't think so.
See, what's amazing to me is back in the 1980s, the town actually voted something like 5% of their total budget to establish the stabilization fund. It wasn't done over a number of years. It was all done in 1 year.
Wow.
And, you know, to my mind, the stabilization fund or the stabilization fund and free cash should total that same 5%. But if you're not,
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The 5%, the free cash is free cash, and that's a number. Stabilization can be as small or as large as we want it to be. And the stabilization fund is for emergency items. And there are other towns, notably Stowe, whose stabilization funds are much larger than what we currently have. So we shouldn't be, I violently disagree with that stabilization and free cash should amount to 3 to 5%.
well, I said 5%. Free cash is 3 to 5%, or something like that. But
So-
stabilization, I think, should be 5% of the entire budget, because historically, up until 2018, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But
We do have financial policy targets, and they say we want certified free cash 3 to 5% of our total expenditures in the prior fiscal year. And they say overall reserves, free cash plus stabilization fund plus overlay reserve, 6 to 10% of total expenditures. Again, those are targets, but that's what we have said for a number of years now.
okay, so I'm all for doing stabilization, but I don't know that in any given year I would prioritize that over the capital budget. I mean, we're essentially dedicating almost no money this year.
Right. So again, this is not year to year. This is specifically talking about if we get a one-time revenue source,
Right.
Yeah.
like
And-
sale of property or something.
I don't think you can, in a document that's gonna live for any length of time, you can set out priorities like that, because the needs are gonna change.
That's true. That's very true. That's very
Well,
true.
I think you need to do it to the extent that you don't just spend it as part of your operations.
Right, and I think one of the things is part of a component of meeting the stabilization goals is to catch up on stuff that you used prior amounts for, like the OPEB that we did this year. Is we can't just say, okay, that was last year, let's forget about it and let's move forward. It's no, let's make sure we catch up in case we had any, we had to spend less on something that we thought was important last year.
Well, but you have to remember the stabilization fund is for unanticipated expenses.
Yeah.
OPEB is not an unanticipated expense. We know what that expense is. This
Yeah.
is like emergency stuff which gets voted at a town meeting.
I
Yeah,
think Don's just saying that we should make up next year for the shortfall this year in terms of OPEB.
that's correct. And
Yeah,
I-
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Stan. If the stabilization fund is a forward-looking fund, fine, let's use it for forward-looking things. I just don't want to forget the stuff that we left behind.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
it's not for forward-looking. It's for emergency situations that may occur within a current fiscal year. That's what the stabilization fund is. But no, I agree. We need things like OPEB. We need to make up for what we didn't put in this year. I agree.
Or, yeah, and you know, of the three priorities here, I don't see anything to say, make sure you've caught up on anything from back behind. But also to to Bill's point, I think we should consider maybe, establish the following priorities and put in the words in no particular order when appropriating one-time revenue.
Yeah, because one might become more important than the other.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And-
I think that's right, Don. I think you just take out the order here and just say,
Yeah,
we will
yeah.
review the following areas for one-time revenues.
Right, we'll consider the following areas, yeah. But definitely I would urge us to add in something about
Yeah, per priority. Exactly.
replenish anything that got, I don't know, cut in the past. I'm not sure the wording there.
Following, I don't know, categories.
Yeah,
Something
Yeah,
like,
that's perfect. Yep.
I would say like per existing priority so like bring it up that like we at the time when if we get the excess cash, whatever priority like is the top priority of the town, that's where it's gonna go to instead of just saying one of these three. Because it's gonna leave it vague and it's gonna start an argument if it happens,
yeah.
and people are gonna say like prioritize it like by I don't know prioritize yeah.
So, Omi, do you think this sentence kind of captures that where we give ourselves an out here, which says, okay, some things may come up that will mean we may have to deviate from this?
Yeah,
I think that may be an out for us.
okay.
All right, so I think what we're saying here is we're not going to prioritize these and we'll just deal with them as we look at the needs that particular year.
yep.
Okay, great. And that's it for actual content changes. Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. There was a suggestion here. It used to say town departments that charge fees shall annually review their fee schedules. The suggestion is every 2 years instead of annually.
Okay.
Any strong reactions either way?
I mean, that's a good guideline, but if we feel that we need to look at it sooner, we can. It's not.
Yeah, I want to say as needed, but I also want to make sure that it's not dropped. The ball isn't dropped on that.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So, how do I get this down? If I stop sharing this, I would. There we go. Okay. So since we have the select board here, the plan is we're going to continue to revise this. We'll get some feedback from the finance committee. The advisory committee will vote on this document at some point in the next few weeks. And then I'd like to bring it up to the select board for your review. And if you're happy with it, you can vote on it and accept it or not. And if you accept it, we'll just put out a revised policy document.
Okay.
Okay, that's the end of our agenda. Does anyone have anything else? We'll plan to meet again next week. Next week is our last opportunity to review and vote on the warrant for annual town meeting before it has to go to print. Okay, Bob, do you want to adjourn the select board?
Sure. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
I'll second that. Roll call, Stan,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. Select board is adjourned. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay,
Good work on the budget.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Advisory committee, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second that.
All right, advisory committee, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye, okay. The advisory committee is adjourned as well. Thanks.